You're staring out into the horizon on a warm summer day, when out of nowhere, parachutes, and lots of them. As the parachutes go by, your engineering self can't help but wonder, how much weight can one of those things hold? And how fast can they slow you down? Two questions that have been plaguing your mind for decades. But that ends today. What is up, guys? My name is Andrew and welcome to Space Busters, the series in Space Engineers where we put things to the test. And in this episode, we're taking a little look at parachutes, something that I've really not used that much in the game, but I kind of want to see what the limits are. Now, if you've never used a parachute before, essentially what it does is it's this little block right here that uses a canvas, and it can actually deploy and slow down your ship like a normal parachute would in real life. But I don't really know any of the limits of the parachutes, and I'm kind of interested in finding out what they are. Specifically, I mean, if you use like only one parachute, how much weight can that hold? Like, can that hold like a massive ship? Could you have like this giant ship with one parachute and the one parachute be able to stop it? What about speed? If you're going super fast, like halfway to the speed of light or something, would one parachute be able to stop you or slow you down before you hit the ground? Those are things that we're going to test in this episode. So the first thing that we're going to test here is going to be the weight, because I want to see if this one little parachute can hold up the entire weight of this ship. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop it from a certain height, and we're going to see how it reacts when it gets to the auto deploy height of the parachute. And that's where the parachute is going to deploy and slow down our ship. And then what we're going to do is we're going to continuously add more weight to this vehicle until hopefully the parachute can't handle it anymore. And we'll find out the weight limit of a parachute. So I guess let's just start it out right now with this one. Because we can see the weight on the right hand side. It's 23,939 kilograms. Let's go ahead and bring this all the way up to our drop off point, and we will drop it and see what happens, and hopefully we'll hit that target, which is slightly obscured by the sand, but we'll find out what happens here. Okay, let's set this up. Alright, everything is set up. All we need to do is hit the switch, which in this case is deleting a block, and it will start to fall and auto deploy at about 300 meters, which should be somewhere like down there. What we're going to measure is we're going to measure the weight of the ship, we're going to measure the speed that it hits the ground at, and we're going to measure whether or not the parachute deployed. And hopefully as we add more weight to this thing, we'll start seeing maybe it will hit the ground faster, or maybe it won't deploy at all. So let's start our first test. Alright, with a base weight of 23,939 kilograms, we're going to remove this right here, and it's going to start falling. 3, 2, 1, let's hit it, and hop right back into our seat. And I guess we're going to measure the speed. Hopefully it deploys. It should at about 300. Yep, there we go. It's deploying. And what we're measuring is not anything here, but we're measuring how fast it goes when it hits the ground, which is probably going to be around 12 point something. And again, hopefully as we add weight to this, it'll start to do more. So that was 12.81. Let's add some weight and do it again. Alright, dropping it now. I added 100k iron ore, which gives us a weight of 125,459 kilograms. Let's see what that does to our parachute. Parachute has deployed. We've got a weird turn, but that's probably because all the weight's on one side, which was a mistake on my part. Let's see what happens to our speed. We are going much faster than the 12 that we were going before, about 15 meters per second. Okay, that was a decent landing. I think 15, I didn't see the exact number, but I think it was 15 point something. So 15 meters per second landing speed, roughly. Alright, that's fine. Let's add more weight and try it again. Alright, launching it again. I added 300,000 more iron, giving us a total weight of 425,500, or no, 499, whatever. Okay, let's just measure the stuff. They're all evenly distributed, so hopefully this should be fine. We're going 21.3 something meters per second. So we're definitely going faster, but we still survived. Now, are we surviving because of the wheels on the bottom? Who knows? But we are still surviving, so that's a good sign. Alright, dropping the ship. This time we have more than double the weight of our previous attempt. Oh, is our parachute going to deploy because we have those blocks on top? I hope so. Let's find out. Yes, it deploys fine. Let's check our speed. Our speed is 29 point something. Not bad. Okay, so that's still not the parachute's limit, although at this point you might start hurting if you crash into the ground at that speed. Okay, attempt number 5. This might be our last one, or at least we're getting close, because I've doubled the weight once again. We're at 1,625,519 kilograms. Parachute's out. Let's see what our weight, or let's see what our speed is as we hit. Oh, it's 44 point something, and we've definitely destroyed some stuff. Okay. What? Why did a rock just What the heck was that? Oh, that must have like exploded out of here, gone straight up, and then come straight. There's still some coming down. What? Did I just launch rocks into the air by hitting that? What the heck? Well, after just 5 trials with a weight of 1,625,000 roughly, we have destroyed our thing. Now that's for a 300 meter deploy height for the parachute. I do want to do this test again with a 600 meter deploy height to see how that changes the results. So let's try again with 600 meters and see what happens. Because we're going to hit the ground at 12.87, 12.86, 12.85, 4, 3, 2, 1, 12.81. That is exactly the landing speed to the number that we had on the first one with a 300 meter deploy height. Now that is interesting. Yeah, this test I'm probably going to speed through because I feel like it's only going to count with the really heavy ones. 15.32 is what we're going to measure here. Oh, actually, wait, we are getting a little lower than what it previously was at 21.9, 21.09 rather. Okay, trial number 4, where we added 400,000 more iron to this thing to a total of 825,000. Let's see what happens. Parachute should be deploying any second now. Here we are. And in the last one, we had a speed of 39.80. Let's see what happened. Well, we're already way less than that. We're at 27 point something, 26.96 maybe? Alright guys, this is the one you've been waiting for. This is the one that destroyed our target last time. But this time we have a 600 meter deploy height. So let's see if it's going to cause any problems. Alright, dropping it now. We have a weight of an astonishing 500 kilograms. Okay, it's a lot. Let's see what happens. Parachute has deployed. Let's keep an eye on our speed as we get closer to the ground. Now, last time we had a speed of 44 meters per second hitting the ground. This time it's going to be a little bit less at 36.39. Still destroyed stuff, but still, I mean, that wasn't as bad, I suppose. Ooh, I forgot that was a thing that happened. The parachute has deployed once again because it thought that it was falling due to that thing falling down. And it looks like we have a couple more bombs coming down as well, which is, that's not going to hit me straight on, is it? Nope, it's gonna go right next to me. There it goes. All right, that's kind of a crazy phenomenon of hitting the ground, is that all your ores just start flying. All right, so this is the spreadsheet that I used to record the data. We have data for the 300 meter deploy height parachute and the 600 meter deploy height parachute. And then for each trial, we were recording the weight of the craft, how fast it hit the ground, whether the parachute deployed, and whether or not the ship survived. Now, one interesting little bit of information that I was not expecting to see at all was that even though the parachute deployed much earlier with the 600 meter deploy height, the first 3 values of landing speed when it hit the ground are very similar, sometimes even exactly, to the 300 meter deploy height. So even though this had 300 more meters to slow down, it didn't actually end up slowing down at all. Even though when the parachute deploys, the speed is going down the entire time it's falling. So I wonder if that just means like when it deploys at 600 meters, it's going faster at that moment than when it deploys at 300 meters? I do not know, but it is interesting. Now, the information that we can glean from this is actually pretty good as well because of the graphs here. Even though I only recorded 5 trials with different data points, the graph is pretty consistent here with both of the 300 and 600 meter tests, which means if you want to find out how much one parachute can handle on a small ship, all you have to do is find how much your ship weighs, and then you can go to this to find out just about how fast it'll hit the ground. So for instance, if your ship weighs 1 million kilograms, you can assume that it'll hit the ground at about maybe 28 or 29 meters per second. And if your ship weighs 1,500,000 kilograms, even though we didn't record that piece of data, you can assume that it'll hit the ground at about 35 meters per second, just using this graph. And this probably extends. I don't know exactly how far it extends because our tests only go as far as when the ship cannot survive any longer. But yeah, so this is your weight chart, and if you want to find a specific weight, it's very easy. Just look it up on the chart. In our tests, both of trial 5s did not survive the fall, even though the 600 meter deploy height survived it a little bit better. Well, I mean, it didn't really survive it better, but it crashed, I guess, less. But in both cases, they did not fall. So if you have a ship that's this heavy, maybe consider using 2 parachutes instead of just 1. I would be cautious pretty much anywhere above the... I'll probably say anywhere above the million mark, I would start to be a little bit worried that 1 parachute might not be able to handle it, because you're going to start hitting the ground really quickly. So that's the information that we got from the weight test. Let's go ahead and move on to the speed test. All right, it's time for the speed test, and this is the craft that we're going to be using for the speed test. Now, quick disclaimer, the speed test is a modded test. It's not a vanilla test because we're using speeds that are outside the base game speed of 100 meters per second. So if you're only interested in vanilla findings, then the weight test is really all you need, and I guess you can stop watching this part here. But if you're interested in finding out how fast a parachute can handle, whether it can handle 200 meters per second, maybe 400, maybe 800, maybe even 1600, then stick around for this test because this is going to be interesting. Let's bring this craft up to space and we will start. All right, trial 1 of the speed test. We have a max speed currently set with Midspace's configurable speed mod to 200 meters per second. So we can't go any faster than that, and we're going to be using that for the first trial. So what we're measuring here is the top speed. We're measuring the whether the parachute deploys at all. We're also measuring a couple of other pieces of data, which I'll explain later, because I actually need to use editing to find them. Actually, I'll tell you what they are now. So the deceleration start height, the deceleration end height, the deceleration end speed, and the time of the deceleration provided by the parachute. We're going to be measuring those as well. But unfortunately, we can't actually just eyeball that data because it's so fine, it's so difficult to actually see. So we're going to discover that in editing, and I'll come back and tell you guys. So we're approaching our 1,000 meter deploy height. Let's see if the parachute can stop us at 200 meters per second. Here's the deploy height, parachute is out, and we are slowing down nicely. All right, I think that'll count our 200 meters per second max speed as a success. Okay, so with the speed test, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna move on to 400 meters per second and see if it can stop us. All right, we're back in space for trial number 2, 400 meter per second top speed set by Midspace configurable speed mod. Let's use our thrusters this time. So we have some override thrusters on top that we can use to speed ourselves up in case we want to get to that speed faster. So we're looking for 400 meters per second. We're just going to let these things bring us up to there. So about the data points that I have to measure in editing as far as the deceleration goes, what we're hoping to find is the acceleration provided by the parachutes themselves, and we'll be able to find out how many G's we're experiencing when we see that. I actually see one of our crafts off in the distance. I don't know if you guys just saw that, but yeah, one of them's just kind of floating there. All right, we're at 400 meters per second. Let's slow it down a little bit, and pretty much just continue to fall until we get to 1,000. All right, we're very fast approaching that 1,000 meter mark. Here it comes any second now. Parachute should deploy, and we are safely stopped. Nice. All right, 400 is fine. What about 800? If we were going 800 meters per second, would it be able to stop us? All right, for our next trial, we're operating on an 800 meter per second max speed. Let's see if the parachutes can stop us. But first, we have to get up to 800 meters per second, or at least as close as we can, because I don't know exactly how we need a lot of space to get up to 800 meters per second is what I'm trying to say. So let's see if we can. We're just going to let these thruster overrides kind of take us there. All right, I've disabled the thruster override because we're getting very close. We're not going to get to 800. There's no way. But we're at about 700. Let's see the parachutes. Can it stop us? And it can. I'm amazed. We didn't get exactly to 800, but we got pretty darn close. Now, we did also get pretty close to the ground, though. So I'm thinking it's probably not much more than 800 that we can survive here. Let's go to 1,200 meters per second and see if it can survive that. Well, let's just go to 1,000 and we'll give ourselves more space. All right, this time we started pretty far out in space. We're going, well, we're almost there. We're at 600, 700, but you'll see how jaw-droppingly fast we are by how fast we approach Earth. Look at our height right there. It's going down really quickly. We're almost at 800 meters per second, and yeah, all right. This is a bit crazy. I'm gonna have to get ready to turn off the thrusters here because it's I don't want the thrusters to be running when I pull the parachute. Pretty much. 900. I can go a little farther. Okay, I'm gonna turn them off now. Turn off the thrust override. Hopefully we get to 1,000. I think we will. It'll be kind of close though. Yeah, I think we will. Okay, we should be good. It's going a little bit over 1,000, but that's fine. Let's see if the parachute pulls and saves us. I highly doubt it will, but let's see. Oh, nope. I mean, did it save us? Yeah. But has our ship seen better days? Also, yeah. And is it also partially slightly in the ground? Again, yeah. So I think 1,000 meters per second is the cutoff here. 1,000, we barely survive. I mean, we survive. The ship takes damage. Anything above 1,000, that would only be a little bit worse. So maybe 1,200, the entire thing is obliterated. Not obliterated. It's properly glitched into the ground. Ah, there we go. Freedom. All right, you go and do your own thing. All right, I think we have our answer as far as the top speed test goes. 1,000 meters per second. Anything up to that, if you have a 1,000 meter deploy height, anything up to 1,000, it can pretty much stop. But anything beyond 1,000 seems to be that's where your ship is going to start crashing. It's amazing that the single parachute can actually stop you that well. Now, we also have a lot more data that we want to get from this test here. So for each of those different trials that we did for all those different speeds, I'm going to actually go in editing and find all the information related to the deceleration, and hopefully I'll be able to give you guys how many G's we were experiencing when we went through that. So let me go through editing and I'll come back with the actual data. Hello, I am Andrew from the future, and I have the data. I spent a little while in the editing software going through frame by frame trying to figure out the certain speeds, and I decided that I'm actually, so I was originally going to put it in this graph right here, but I decided that it's a lot more complicated than just putting in one number for each of these trials, so I did a little bit more than that. But first let me show you this. We have all the 4 trials with our top speeds and whether or not the parachute deployed. This right here was the first time I did it. This is actually the second time I've done this experiment. The first time I tried it at 600 meters and it didn't work very well. So I figured it'd be better just to try it at 1,000 meters so it would work a little bit better. So that's the data for this. Now, let's get into the good stuff. So, first of all, let's go to the 200 meter deceleration. Every 5 milliseconds in the video, I went and recorded the speed and the height, and I was able to derive the acceleration that we were feeling and the G's as well from that. So every 5 milliseconds, we have this data right here. The acceleration is derived from this, and the G's is derived from the acceleration. So G's pretty much just means how many Earth gravities are you feeling. So Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. That's the acceleration. So if you were feeling 3 times that, you'd be feeling 3 G's. To better explain the G's, let's go to our G sheet over here, to our gravity sheet to understand. So I've done a little bit of research before going into this on G-force limits and stuff like that. It's very difficult to find information above 9 G's about what would happen to the human body, but at least I can go through these, and these ones right here are like more experimental, I guess. So a G-force of 3 is typically something that you might be able to withstand for a couple of hours. When the astronauts go to space in the space shuttle, or when they used to, that's what they would experience, is around 3 G's. 5 G's is what the typical person can handle. So that's like if you were on a crazy roller coaster or something and you had this crazy turn, maybe you'd get up to 5 G's, but you could only really handle it for a couple of minutes, then you might start passing out and bad stuff would happen. 9 G's is typically seen as the limit for a fighter pilot. So when they have like all this training and they have like a G suit on, which helps them withstand this, they can withstand up to 9 G's, but they can only do it for a couple seconds. Now these last 2 take with a grain of salt because I'm not sure about these. I just read these somewhere on the internet, but I read somewhere that 30 G's is where a trained pilot would have severe injury if they were sitting, and 40 G's is where a trained pilot might survive for 1 second if they're prone. Again, take these for a grain of salt. I found them online somewhere. I'm just using them as an example for the data. All right, let's take a look at the data. So one thing that's interesting about the parachutes that I didn't expect is that they actually decelerate kind of gradually at first, and then way more, and then gradually again. So they kind of even off a little bit. I was expecting just like a flat deceleration, but instead it's more of a curve. So we can see here the acceleration starts not that high, but then it starts going way higher. We have a lot of acceleration here, and then it starts kind of decreasing lower and lower. And I imagine if we went farther than 4 seconds, by the way, this is 4 seconds because we're using 5 milliseconds each time. So that's 1 second. That's another second right there, and then another and another. But if we were to go further, you would see this acceleration continue to decrease until you reach the ground pretty much. But talking about G's, we start with G's that we can definitely sustain here, but then we get quickly into the red zone here for about a little bit less than a second. If you were a typical person not trained, you might have a little bit of trouble. You'd definitely pass out. So this is not where you want to be. You'd probably survive it though, so because it quickly comes back down, and you would probably be safe. So the 200, you'd probably survive. You'd be fine. Let's talk about the 400. Now, you're seeing some different colors here, obviously. The 400 is pretty much the same curve, but a lot steeper here. So we see, again, the acceleration starts off low, but then it picks up quickly to the point where you're quickly out of fighter pilot standards here. You're quickly into the place where you'd have a bad time. So for more than a second, you're in this area where you don't want to be. Again, I don't really know what would happen to you. You might experience injury with this level of G's. I don't really know, but it would not be good. Moving on to the 700 meter, we see the same thing, but again, a lot more red. We see a lot steeper curve right here. At this point, I think you might die because the highest G-force you're experiencing here is 88.48, which is really high, even though you're only experiencing that for like a couple milliseconds. But I mean, for almost a second, you're experiencing these G's, which is crazy. And at least for 2 seconds, you're experiencing the fighter pilot level of G's as well. So honestly, I don't think you would survive this. Let's talk about the 1000. Now the 1000 is a little bit weird because we actually ended up crashing at the end, but you can actually see that the parachute would have worked had we had enough space to continue falling. So maybe if the deploy height was 1200, this would have actually landed properly because you can see it's kind of getting there. But anyways, a lot more red. The max G-force we're experiencing is 183 G's. You're dead. I feel like you're dead. And then of course down here, this is when we hit the ground, so we experience a lot of G's there as well. But isn't that crazy that even when you hit the ground, like when you go from speed to nothing, hitting the ground, you're not experiencing as many G's as you did when the parachute deployed? That's crazy. So as far as survivability goes, you would definitely survive the 200 meter deceleration, maybe with a headache, or maybe you'd pass out. With the 400 meter, if you survive, you'd be in pretty bad shape. With the 700 meter, I don't think you would survive, and obviously with the 1000 meter, you would not survive either. If any of you guys know more about G-force, because I really looked this up like before recording this, and it was kind of hard to find information about what happens if you get past the 9 G's range. So if you're someone who knows about G-force and would like to explain what might happen in these cases, please comment below because that would be very interesting to hear about. But anyways, that's the end of this episode. Let's go to the outro. That's all I've got for this episode of Space Busters. If you guys liked it, please hit the like button, put any comments and suggestions down below in the comments section, and I will see you guys in the next episode of Space Busters.